Hello and welcome to another episode of Focus On. My name is Gyamo Mosipili. We are at the inaugural Africa Trade Conference here in Cape Town. This event seeks to bring together key voices in trade, finance and commerce across the African continent. It also highlights the potential of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and some of its objectives in realizing real economic growth across the continent. I spoke to some of the voices present here on what they have to say about the future of commerce in Africa. You made earlier mention of the fact that Africa is not a single entity, but a key subject or theme that has presented itself in this conference today is regional integration by means of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. As you operate in multiple regions, one, how do you balance the different jurisdictions? But additionally, how do you encourage that intra-African trade as well?
Okay, so I think to solve a problem, you have to understand the problem. Intra-African trade today is around about 16-18%. And why that? A couple of things. The first is that the productive capacity within Africa is limited. We don't produce a lot. What we do is that we produce commodities, ship it out, and then bring finished goods into Africa. So that's one. The second is that within Africa, there is lack of trust or trust deficit. How is a Nigerian going to deal with somebody in Kigali? I don't know you. And therefore, how do we bridge that trust deficit? The second is around access to capital. How do we get people to get access to capital that is affordable? Most SMEs in Africa, maybe 50% SMEs don't have access to finance. And when you have it, it's expensive. How do you ensure? Because you need finance to push trade. I think the last is really around, the information. When I want to buy from Ghana, who's in Ghana that I know, what was it selling? So how do you create information through maybe a marketplace where I know that if I want to buy something, all right, is available in Accra or is available in Lusaka. And so those are the challenge that we see. And because of how Access Bank, that's what we are trying to resolve. So let me take the issue of trust. From a trust perspective, because we have a regional expansion, we are in 16 African countries today. Now, if you have a trader in Lusaka who was something in Accra, there is a bank that's in those two countries that can ensure that trust deficit, all right, is reduced because you are dealing with Access Bank, you are dealing with that counterparty through Access Bank. So we deal with trust. Capital is really how we attract capital into Africa. Over the last 2 years, we've had about $2 billion in capital flows to support trade, to support SME, to support agri, to support women. Now, and to make it affordable, all right? The third is around information. The idea is that how do we, create a portal where across Africa, you rate the supply, you rate the buyers across Africa. If you want to do something, you then go on there, find out, and then they will also be rated. So that's something that we are doing to ensure that we support. And obviously, lastly, is around productive capacity. I mean, an example is in Nigeria, Dangote refinery. Now, what is happening is that we used to take a lot of our crude outside. We are now actually refining crude. What it means is that if other African countries are now able, or Dangote is able to supply African countries, what it means is that refined product that they used to buy, from Saudi, they cannot buy from Nigeria, and therefore inter-African trade, starts to increase.
Another element, you made mention of access to finance and trust. There has been earlier mention in terms of decreasing the cost of transactions through cross-border payments. Some of the inroads you have made as well as Access Bank on that front.
So I will speak to it in two perspectives. I think on the AfCFTA end, there's something called PAPS, which is the Pan-African Payment System. And I think that's the idea that, without trade, you have to pay. And therefore, no matter what you do with trade, the end point is that. So how do you make the cost of trade easier? So that's what PAPS is trying to achieve, that we can then ensure that whatever currency that you are, all right, you get sorted in your local currency. Now, from an Access Bank standpoint, we have a product called Access Africa. Now, Access Africa is our remittance and payment product that allows you wherever you are. Today, we've connected with MasterCard, which gives us access into additional 180 countries. It then means that, in those 180 countries, that product can be used, to pay or to receive from our customers from a trade perspective. So I think for us, that's one of the things that we are doing to ensure that, say, cost of trade, there is access to trade as well as cost to that trade.
I also want to make mention of an earlier point that you gave in terms of including some of the more underbanked or underserved communities, such as youth and women, in terms of the financial inclusion front and digitalization. What is the progress in terms of that? Also ensuring that Africa is able to compete on the global stage.
Thank you very much. And I think, if the starting point is, if we look at Africa is about 1.5 billion people. About 400 million of those people are financially excluded. And the question is, how do we bring them into that financial system to ensure that? Now, one of the things that you find us do is really look for a cheaper way, a technology way, or where we can bring them in through use of what you call USSD. We call it USSD. So we have USSD in every country. Now, through that USSD as well, we can also do lending. So we have in a number of countries where we do what we call nano loans, working with the telcos, where if you are a subscriber to a telecom company, based on your airtime, that purchase history, we can actually lend you money, through your phone. So that we are doing that in Mozambique, we are doing that in Botswana. Now the other thing we are doing is around, agency banking, because in a country like Congo, that you have about only 40% that are financially included, we are working with post offices, working with government, and also setting up agency banking across in a number of locations in Rwanda, in Kenya, to support financial inclusion in that market.
We are at the latter end of the Africa Trade Conference. Some of the key points that have been mentioned are on the progress and the potential of the AfCFTA. In your capacity, one, what is the progress of this agreement, and is there room for improvement?
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, if you align the theme for this conference, empowering Africa, through trade, innovation, and growth, you realize that AfCFTA plays a very huge role. What they do is that we've created a system which is supposed to solve all the problems of trade between African countries. Now, unfortunately, it hasn't gone as we should. We are trying to looking at doubling what we are doing right now, somewhere in 2035, which means that there's a huge gap, a huge one. The Secretariat based in Ghana is doing all that it can, setting up hubs, inviting clients to teach them how to deal with one another. Problem is that African traders don't team up. The issue of cooperation is a very key thing. So it's always a problem. Now, moving from one country to the other is another. So the AfCFTA can have a very huge database of traders, but the implementation has always been a problem. And I think there are measures so far being adopted by AfCFTA to solve this problem. But for now, there's more room for improvement.
Yeah. You make mention that implementation is the problem, and often some of the solutions are right alongside the neighboring countries hold the solutions, but due to a lack of collaboration, that is not being realized. I want to zero in on another proponent, which is the PAPS initiative. What is the progress on that in terms of real time, and does it really service or complete its objectives?
Yes, actually, the Pan-African payment system is supposed to serve a huge payment problem in if you look at the scope of AfCFTA. Now, you can get a trader in Ghana trading with his counterpart in Nigeria, and to make payments, he has to either give the money fiscal to somebody to send it over, or go through the banking system, change first into dollars and then back into naira. So the system, which has, we are grateful to AfriExim for supporting, has come to say, unfortunately, as we speak, there are only 20 countries which have signed on to the project, and just over 200 banks within the whole continent who have signed on to the project. which means there are still problems either with people understanding, either with clients really believing in the project, whether they can make payment actually between two countries within the same Africa or not. And this has been a systemic problem.
I'm from Ghana Revenue Authority, whereby a revenue authority, we ensure that the right duties, we take the taxes in the country. So we deal mostly with the traders and importers and exporters of the nation. So then we are here on the invitation of Access Bank to observe it and check the regulations, the problems, or the other problems that the traders may have in terms of trade and then moving goods across Africa. And then that's one of the big challenges that we have generally noticed in terms of intra-African trade. So that's what we are here to take notes and then ensure that we help move and facilitate trade across Africa.
Across a number of speakers, there has been the mention of adopting the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. You say you are part of facilitating intra-regional integration and inter-regional trade. What is the progress in terms of this adoption, one, but also what are some of the challenges of seeing that objective through?
Okay, thank you very much. On that note, Ghana is one of the first countries to ratify and then sign on to the AfCFTA agreement. And then also, we have a few challenges with other countries because of trust, basically, that everyone wants to support their indigenous country or indigenous companies. So everyone wants to make sure that their product is being safeguarded. So that's one of the major challenges that we have. But then, in breaking that barrier, because of inter-regional trade, we take and source other goods from other places. Most of these companies are now sourcing from other parts of the Africa. Then that means that if you are, for example, you're producing a good and then you have some parts from South Africa, some part from Kenya, some part from Ghana, you put them together, it is originating from Africa. It makes the movement within the continent easier. So that aspect is what we are helping in terms of making the trade easier within Africa.
And lastly, what is your opinion in terms of facilitating trust as well?
Thank you. In facilitating trust, we have the regulations. So we have companies that are certified. So when you certify them, we have let's say, the website where we keep this roster of companies that have been certified and their products certified coming from either the country or the bloc, West Africa or Eastern. This would help other companies or banks to trust these companies in terms of knowing that, yes, these companies have been certified, they've been checked, and everything, we know that they can trust in terms of their products. We know where it's coming from and where we're dealing with. So then that helps in terms of breaking any barriers of trust.
And that's how we wrap up this episode of Focus On at the first ever Africa Trade Conference here in Cape Town. From me, Gyamo Musabile, and the rest of the CNBC Africa team, it's goodbye for now.